All right. Welcome back, everybody, to another WTTA podcast. I'm your host, Michael Sodini. Today, I am joined by Kevin Berry, my co-host. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties, but it wouldn't be this show without that. Right, Kevin? I was going to go full Bill O'Reilly on you.
This is the first of this nature. We've never not connected to our live stream. Usually it's somebody's audio, but yeah, that's tradition.
It's all good, though. We keep pushing on. Today, we are going to have a friend. I'd like to consider both of you my friends at this point. We've talked enough to talk about a subject that is very controversial inside of the 2A community, the firearms community. We're going to talk about the reluctance of technology for tracking purposes, right? And some of it is valid, some of it's not. And we can draw to some examples. One that comes to mind recently is Liberty Safe and what they did and how they've been reeling, kind of doing the PR thing since they had that issue. Most listeners probably know what that is, but basically they gave access to law enforcement to a safe codes, therefore creates suspicion amongst the 2A community, the firearms industry. I think that has kind of gotten in the way of us embracing some technology. The two gentlemen I have on today are not only friends, but partners of WTTA. We stand together. One of the reasons why I believe in both of them is because of their stance on technology and privacy when it comes to technology. First, I want to introduce friend of the show. You've been on here before, Patrick Bertagna, the CEO of MedAlert and Gun Alert founder. How are you doing, sir?
Great. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, absolutely. You're alive. Like, that's the most important thing with this fires. It's great to see your face and know that you're okay. I hope you're not breathing in bad air.
Today we're okay. God, it's really been terrific for the last 4 or 5 days. But today we actually are seeing some blue skies and very little ash floating around. So, but up until yesterday, we were walking around with N95 masks on.
Yeah, just horrific stuff that's going out there. So thoughts and prayers to all the people that have lost everything. I mean, this is catastrophic, but yeah, sometimes disaster happens, evil stuff happens, and that's the way it is. Grant Majors, you, sir, I wanted to get you on the podcast. I'm glad you're here today. We're going to do a separate podcast in the future because I feel like your story deserves its own podcast, just like Patrick's does. But you are the CEO and founder of American Rounds. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Michael, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, real fast, Grant, tell the audience what you do, because I think it's a very interesting kind of out-of-the-box model that the 2A community needs to hear about. And first of all, I want to preface this by saying the 2A community needs to hear that this is real. This is a real thing. Because a couple of people that I have talked to in the 2A community they thought it was satire. They thought it was like an Onion piece or Babylon Bee piece, right? And that's one of the reasons why you're here today. It's got to clear the air on those things.
No, thanks. So American Rounds, we founded it in summer 23, and we are bringing to market the first ammunition automated retail machines, or as was commonly thought of, vending machines. So we've got vending or automated retail machines for ammunition. We're adding accessory products like Gun Alert, mag loaders, red dots, all kinds of different products into the machines, and rolling them out across grocery stores, convenience stores, hardware stores, all types of different places.
Yeah. And you also help promote better mental health and suicide prevention by running a short ad about Walk Talk America. So all three of us work together in this space. And I can't thank both of you enough for the support you've given to WTTA. Patrick, tell us a little bit about Gun Alert. I know some listeners probably already have heard, what you do and your mission, but let's give them a little recap.
Certainly. So our mission's simple: help save lives, reduce firearm tragedies. And we come from a technology background. We've been developing and deploying technology solutions that have a health and wellness attribute to it for over 2 decades. And a couple of years back, we were looking at, besides obviously human assets, in terms of knowing where those human assets are, how they're doing, their well-being, which is our core business. We looked at what other assets that are valuable that require some kind of remote oversight. And obviously we know trains, trucks, boats, planes, all that stuff, all that technology exists. And that wasn't really for us. We were looking at what high value assets, if you lose sight of them, could potentially create a tragedy. And firearms was the first thing that came to mind. So we've created the world's first 3-in-1 gun safety solution. It's a steel lock, a cable lock, traditional cable lock that you would find, in most ammunition or most, gun store sales. But we've added two components of technology. One is a highly sensitive motion sensor, and the other one is GPS and cellular tracking. So the use case is you're law-abiding, you have weapons, firearms, but you're not in line of sight of them. You're at work, you're out on vacation, you're out in the backyard, it doesn't matter. And someone touches your firearm, you'll immediately get an alert on your phone. And if that firearm is picked up and is moved, you'll start getting push notifications in terms of where the location of that firearm is. So we can look at this in terms of what we call this as a pause. This creates a pause to any potential nefarious act. So whether it's suicide, a veteran suicide, or any kind of suicide, whether it's a kid that takes the gun and wants to take it to school, whether it's a thief that steals the gun that wants to use it in a robbery, all these incidents, it's the firearm's not creating the tragedy, it's the human being behind it. But the law-abiding gun owner needs to know what's going on with their firearm. So we're providing technology that apprises them in real time of where their firearm is and what that firearm is doing.
Yeah, so I want to kind of dive right into the topic. There's always pushback when I think we get creative, and people who value their Second Amendment right also value their privacy, there's a little irony in that, right? Because everybody I know that supports the Second also carries one of these around, and usually the comments they make are through social media and the computer, right? So, it's really interesting to see, the dynamic. It's like, okay, if you really want to be off the grid, be off the grid. I mean, my biggest pet peeve is when people post pictures of their guns and then talk about the privacy that they want, or, they're worried. And it's like they're on Instagram showing the latest gun that they're shooting with, or they just went out and purchased. Did either of you anticipate, or was it worse than you thought it was going to be, the pushback? Because I think we're here to address the pushback. That's what I wanted to do. Like, when you got into this, were you like, okay, is this a big deal?
Well, I think we always anticipated it. It's probably been about what we expected, right? So we've got 20-30% that are your anti-gun lobby haters. Then we've got the 20% on this end that are extreme privacy, and they've got concerns, and the middle seems to be understand what we're trying to do, that middle 60%. But it kind of led Patrick and I to some conversations that we were having off topic, and from an American Rounds point of view, what we were thinking about this coming year was how do we establish more trust and more confidence with the 2A community, right? Because for that group over there that's worried about privacy and security, how do we communicate to them that that's what we're about? So Patrick and I started talking about that, and I think it is a challenge just when you start talking about technology and guns and whatnot. You talk about people that want to say that they're off the grid. Really what it amounts to, I think it's less that, I think everybody realizes that your computers and your smartphones and your credit card purchases and all that, the government's doing what they're going to do with it. It's kind of just part of living. I think they get worried about people that are in the industry, whether it's firearms or ammunition, being in direct line with the government and working with them directly to suppress, infringe on people's privacy or their rights. So really trying to address that and help people understand that, that there's like you just said, Michael, that look, everything out there is tracking us out there, but as companies like what Patrick and I are doing, what we're trying to bring technology to create a safer environment, none of us have any interest as, constitutional 2A supporters to work directly with the government. And that standpoint, that'd be an infringement.
Yeah, Patrick, I mean, I know you've been on the show and you talk about scrubbing the data, and I think that's a huge step coming forward and just saying that. But what are your thoughts on this?
So to answer your first question, the pushback's been a little bit more than what I had originally expected, but I think the numbers are in line with what Grant just said. It's the 20% fringe, 25% fringe that are ardent. They just have their beliefs. And again, it seems the irony is they voice their opinions on social media through a cell phone, which they bought with a credit card.
If the list goes on
wa-
and on and on.
yeah, if you're going to walk the talk. I mean, that's all I can say. Not to give you a shameless plug, but you know, so the pushback is there. But when we architected and designed our product, we knew that this was going to happen. And so we put some safeguards in place. One of them is that all the data is scrubbed off of our servers as soon as the phone acknowledges having received the information, whether it's that the gun was moved or the location of the gun. So that the minute that and this is all done in the background, the users don't even know this, but the notification sent to the phone acknowledges that it received the information, sends a command back to the server and says, I got this, wipe it clean. So this is all happening automatically. In addition to that, right through the app, we have a delete all button. Now we give you a big disclaimer and say, you push this button, you're going to wipe everything out. You're not going to be able to retrieve it and so forth and so on. But we do give the end user the ability to scrub their entire account at their leisure on commands. I think the perfect example of all of this is we can point to Facebook. For those who have been paying attention and following what's happening, Facebook colluded, conspired, worked, collaborated. You pick the word, but they helped the federal government.
Exactly.
And now Zuckerberg comes out and goes, well, oops, maybe we went too far and sorry, and we're not going to do that anymore. So who's the culprit? Facebook or Zuckerberg? Facebook's just a technology platform. It didn't do this. It didn't on its own call the FBI and say, hey, look what's happening over here. So I think technology can be used very effectively as long as it's in the right hands. And I know that Grant and I have spoken about this extensively, and we're nobody compared to Zuckerberg, but at least we started from day one saying we are going to uphold the integrity of privacy sacred. It's sacrosanct to us. We are not going to let that piece go. Now it's up to the audience to believe or not believe, but we've made it very clear from day one that we're going to protect that privacy as best we can. If law enforcement comes to us and says, hey, I want to know where Michael's gun was last week, and here's a search warrant, our answer is we can't give you that information. It's gone. Oh,
yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, if I could continue off that, Patrick, one of the things that I try to communicate is that when you look at the tragedies that are happening, the anti-gun lobby uses that as fodder to enact more regulation, right? That's just throwing gas on the fire for them. They can start, pursuing new, trying to get more registration issues, trying to make ammunition sales background check oriented. I mean, all the different things that they try to do to make gun laws stricter and stricter and stricter and strip away our Second Amendment rights. By using technology the right way, and like Patrick was just saying, with companies that are in support of the Second Amendment and respect the rights of the citizens of the country, right? The more we use technology to make the industry as a whole safer or more socially responsible in their communities, right? That takes away that fuel that they have to light the fire for more legislation. They don't have to say it, but there's a part of them that likes the tragedies because they can get what they want. And they're gonna push the agenda. So we've got to, as a community, take notice of that and start working with companies that want to make the community safer and are using technology in the right way. That takes it out of their hands where they can't say, oh, well, we got to have stricter laws.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more that, we are actually, by being proactive and embedding technology as part of the solutions and really doing what you're doing, Michael. And again, thank you for doing this, you and Kevin, because I think it's so important. But by leaning into the whole privacy issue and really debunking this fear, not that the fear is not legitimate, but again, let's analyze really where that fear comes from. It comes from bad actors. So be upset with the bad actors. Don't be upset. It's kind of like the Second Amendment community loves to say, guns don't kill people. People kill people. Okay, well, apply the same logic. It's not the tech that's going to rat you out. It's the people that are running it. And so as long as they have integrity And they have a stated mission that they have no intentions of doing this, and they're going to uphold the privacy to their, to best of their ability. Then you've got to trust that as best you can.
How do your two organizations decide how to kind of lay out the roadmap and blueprint for this technology, all this tech, and these decisions haven't been made before to where there's no industry standard of, do you delete the data after 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? How do you two come up with those decisions?
In our case, it's purely for the point of transaction, right? So if you go and you're buying an alcoholic beverage and someone checks your ID, it's the point of transaction, right? That's it. It's the same at our machines, right? When we scan an ID and we verify who that person is on that ID, that's it. There's no storage of the data. There's no cloud. There's nothing to scrub. It is purely just doing a touch point to say, okay, yes, this person is who they are. It's a legitimate ID. They're of legal age, and that there is no storage of the data. So once that handshake's made, a transaction can be completed. There's no cloud server or anything that's keeping our data.
And we're the same. I mean, we don't conduct a transaction per se, but it is a handoff. Our servers send the data to the firearm owner and says your gun was moved at this time. Once that has been acknowledged, then the data disappears. There's no point in storing it. I mean, to tell you your gun was moved 30 minutes ago, it's irrelevant. You want to know in real time that your gun was moved. And once you know that, there's nothing for us to store.
Yeah, it's really interesting as somebody who ran a importer, I would say master distributor. In some cases, you could argue one or the other. I know that the ATF, we had to work hand in hand with the ATF, especially I did, owning a company out of New Jersey, having my last name. I don't know. I got a lot of ATF visits. Found out from my friends who own gun companies that I used to get triple the amount of ATF visits than they would, right? And there was always audits being done. Back in the day, we had these things called tracers. So if anybody that has worked at a gun shop or worked in a gun manufacturer that's listening knows exactly what I'm talking about. Didn't matter, could come in, 10 of them could come in at 12 o'clock at night. Like, it was weird. But, back in the day, I'm going to date myself here, they'd come in by fax and they'd come in from the ATF, and we would have to run traces on them. And then we'd have to go and actually explain to the ATF where the gun was sold and, the destination, the company, right? Because we could only sell the FFLs. And I remember back in the day going, every time we get one of these would come through, I'd have to go upstairs into our attic, and it looked like the Indiana Jones vault at the very end. There was just be boxes and boxes of these things for every single gun. As time went by, technology got better for the ATF. So everything started to go into a cloud and you could do it electronically. It made life a lot simpler, but that's the same system that's implemented into the NICS for everybody that goes down the line, right? That's one of those things where we had to embrace that technology. We had no choice, right? But we were collecting, it's not data per se, but all this personal information. A distributor sells it to, or say an importer sells it to a distributor, the distributor sells to a dealer, and the dealer sells to Kevin when he walks into the store and says, I like this SIG. All that information is being tracked, right? Now, when Kevin goes into that store and he buys that firearm, he's putting faith in the gun shop, not disclosing any of his information or the ATF, right? It's just something that we've learned to live with. I like what you guys are saying here, because it's like, look, it's the person behind the technology, not the technology, right? Like, the technology isn't bad. Don't blame the technology. If there are 2A people that understand the right to privacy in these situations and respect the Second Amendment and respect the fears, they're never going to do anything to diminish that. Grant, I thought about you the other day because I was jumping on a flight, and obviously when you go through TSA,
right,
there's a sign underneath the thing that says, we erase the photo after it's taken, right? Facial technology. So I thought about you. I didn't know what your thoughts are on that, because you get a lot of pushbacks to facial recognition in machines.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest. I think it's less even the driver's license scan. It is the facial recognition. Somehow people feel like it's out of a sci-fi movie type of experience. But No, I mean, we have the same disclaimer. We don't store your information. It's on the machine. It's a disclaimer when you get there. We want people to know that if you look at, for instance, online sales, which I nothing against online distributors and retailers, they're a big part of the community. But when you look at the number of tragedies, majority of them have been purchased. The ammo has been purchased, for instance, online. Right. So at one point, I'm not sure in the last couple, but at one point, the previous 3 out of 4 school shootings had all been from purchases online. Well, 15-year-old with a parent's information goes and buys, 1,000 rounds of 223 or 5.56 and has it shipped to the house. Your online retailer doesn't have any kind of real ability to determine who that is on the other end of the computer, right? That's buying. Again, that creates damage into the 2A community, because the legislators then yell tragedy and foul against all gun owners and try to project that into the legislation that they want to push. If we can just, as law-abiding gun owners, say, okay, look, here's scan my driver's license, I'm who I am, it's all validated, it's not stored. I mean, what harm came from it? Because the truth is, if you look back, I don't remember if we remember, it was a year or two ago, and it came out that the government was, seeing who all purchased from Cabela's and who all purchased from the Shields of the world. They were going down those lists to see who was buying guns and ammo. I mean, they're getting that from your credit card, right? So unless you're paying cash, at the pawn shop or whatnot, that's just the reality of the situation these days. So we want to keep it into law-abiding citizens' hands and do it the right way. Technology helps.
Yeah, I think we're getting there. I think you're seeing a new generation of people that are used to using their phone, used to having these facial recognition, right? Like how we unlock our phones, technology-minded kids. And then there's kind of this older guard, and that's still part of our community, right? It's like the old-timey kind of, I don't trust technology. It could be used against us. But I think you're going to start seeing more of the younger generation that comes up. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's important that we kind of pay attention to the youth on these things. But Grant, one more thing that I wanted to bring up about your machines is the irony in there is, like, even the anti-gun side likes to say, like, this is not a good idea. This is not safe. And this is actually much more safer than someone purchasing at a store that may not get their ID checked, may not, may have bad intentions. This is not like lollipops coming out of a machine, or, I think people think of like the cigarette machines back in the day where anyone could just roll up to it. This is different. So you've kind of have pushback from the staunch 2A supporter who's leery of technology, but you also kind of get the pushback both ways.
Yeah, we get our share of hate mail for sure. But it's interesting with that group on the in the far left, the anti-gun lobby, when usually if I can have a good conversation with one of them, which is, that's hard to have sometimes, but when I can have those good conversations, they at the end of the day, they say, yeah, you're safe. They'll say, yes, you're safer, but yes, you're safer. Yes, you're a better solution. But the truth is they just want to, get rid of guns and firearms altogether. So that's not an option. Even recently we had that Washington Post article come out, and the gentleman that was interviewing for the Post, which is a left media mecca, he even said, yeah, then he goes, you guys are the safest, the safest and most secure option on the market. That's not in question. They still put the spin on it for the rhetoric, but it's hard they can't argue. It's really difficult for them to argue against what we're doing, for sure.
Yeah. Patrick, do you get any pushback from the anti-gun side?
Yeah. Well, the pushback is just, we just don't want guns out there.
That's it.
Right.
And so, I think the commonality here with the 3 of us, well, the 4 of us on this call, but, specifically with Grant and myself, in terms of us introducing technology into the 2A community, what we're seeing is that the extremes, the extreme right wants to be an ostrich and stick their head in the sand and don't bother me, don't talk to me, don't touch my gun, don't track my gun, don't take my gun away, don't take any of my rights away, leave me alone. And the left just wants to say the complete opposite. Problem solved. Take everyone's guns away. Stop everybody from buying ammunition. Neither one of those situations is tenable. Neither one of those situations will ever see the day of light or the light of day. I mean, because we have constitutional rights. But again, I like to say all the time, just because you have a constitutional right to carry doesn't mean you have a constitutional right to be irresponsible. So both extremes, 20% on the hard left and the 20% on the hard right, that's who we're up against. 60% of Grant's customers and my customers are cool with everything. They get it. And they understand that the technology is actually a benefit. I mean, think about the parent who's at work. Again, law-abiding, you're at work. You've got 1, 2 guns. You're not, some crazy guy with, an armament of 100 weapons. You got a rifle.
That's me, by the way.
And a pistol.
At this point in my life.
Yeah. So you're not some extreme person, and you keep your gun in your nightstand drawer, and you and your wife know it's there. You don't have kids. Okay, you're doing everything right, but you're at work. Someone breaks in your house. I mean, we're seeing this here now in LA with the fires and all the evacuation zones. We have the National Guard patrolling a lot of the evacuation zones because bad actors are going into those neighborhoods and breaking into the houses that are still standing and looting them. So you're doing everything right. You're at work. You come home. Chances are you're not going to go into your nightstand and check if your gun's there. You may not know for days. In the meantime, that gun got used nefariously. Someone stole it, or you do have a kid, and your kid came home with some friends and they went in and they found it, whatever it is, but now you're on the hook. Now your gun could potentially be used in a horrific situation, and you are now liable and responsible. And so I asked the person that's having any bit of trepidation, what would you rather have? The fear that somehow big government's going to know that you have a Glock or a SIG in your nightstand drawer, like they don't already know. If they wanted to know, they don't already have the means to know that. Or the peace of mind that if someone takes your gun, you're going to know right away and you're going to be able to do everything humanly possible to prevent a tragedy. I'll take the latter, because living with the guilt that your gun was used in a shooting, and then you being potentially criminally liable. Why? Because you're like the government didn't know you bought that gun if you paid for it on a credit card. Like the government doesn't know because you posted pictures of you at the shooting range on Facebook. They know already. So do the right thing. Be responsible. That's all we're saying. And don't blame the tech. Embrace the tech. Same thing with Grant. I mean, someone wants to go buy 1,000 rounds of ammo on some online store. No one's going to know about this. At least here with Grant, we're going to know that the person that's buying it is actually of lawful age, doesn't have a felony behind them. I mean, those are good things. Do we want a 15-year-old, young person that may have some mental issues, struggling, going and buying 1,000 rounds of .223? No, I mean, we don't.
Yeah, I don't think. Yes, I think something Patrick said a minute ago kind of resonated with me, which is, the far right's basically, come take my gun over my dead body. Okay, second that. I'm the same way, not taking my firearms from me. But I don't want to give them the reasons to try to come take them from me, right? So the idea that, well, if they come take them from me, we're just going to arm up and that's how we're going to be in 76 again. I mean, that's good in spirit. And I get it in spirit. It's not good in practicality. Nobody wants that. That's not what the majority of the country would ever want to see. That's not a good way to go. So if technology can just keep, firearms out of the hands of those that shouldn't have it, they're underage, they're stealing it from somebody else. I mean, just right now, there's I think there's a legislation in Washington that was just passed, or it's on the table, that simply says that, so if you don't store your firearm in a particular way and it's stolen and used in a crime, that you can be held responsible and receive a felony. Now that makes zero sense to me. So why? So a criminal breaks in, steals something, goes and does something tragic with it, and then I'm should be the one held responsible for it? That doesn't make any sense to me. But that's the kind of legislation that they're putting forth because of, senseless tragedies that are happening. And if technology can help reduce those tragedies, then they don't have the ability, they don't have the reasoning and the logic to enforce new legislation and try to make that forced down our throats. That's a better solution. Let's use technology the right way, and let's have social responsibility to our community. There's nothing negative in that towards the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
Let the free markets navigate these channels. Don't let the government try to social engineer or legislate.
Right.
And it's no different than Lyft and Uber, right? So drunk driving accidents were higher. Drunk driving accidents have come down. It's not because people are drinking less, right? Definitely since COVID. It's because now we have Lyft and Uber. We have an app on our phone. We can ride share. We can do those kind of things. Technology improved an area of social life that was, yes, it's our rights to drink, and it improved the situation to minimize tragedy. It's the same here. It's the same mentality.
It's the free market doing its thing. Exactly. If I know that I'm liable if someone steals my gun, why wouldn't I want to go spend a few $100 and just alleviate that problem? Grant's so right. We want to take away the government's reasoning for legislating us to death. We want to take all those things. We want to say, we've got this. You don't need to lock somebody up that had 3 martinis in jail for the rest of their life. Lyft and Uber came around and, now if the person still chose to get behind the wheel and all that, yeah, there's consequences. But now the free market has provided a lot of solutions, and therefore let that be embraced. Let the government promote those free market solutions. Let them not try to navigate with us on the lane and suck up all the oxygen in the room. Be helpful in the sense that, say, promote these things. Embrace them, lean into them, do PSAs. Just like telling people they shouldn't smoke. I'm all for, remember the old Nancy Reagan commercials? This is your brain. This is your brain on drugs. When they had the eggs in the frying pan. That's fine. But don't make everything, I certainly wouldn't want to have a ban on alcohol. Prohibition proved that it didn't do anything. So let the government promote responsible behavior. And stop there and let everybody just do what they can do to be responsible.
Yeah, I was just talking recently to a mentor of mine who's no longer in the firearms industry, but he was the president of Bangers and ABN, which are 2 big distributors. They no longer exist. They went out of business a few years ago, but it's really interesting because he was, obviously he was in the firearms industry way before my time, but when the whole idea, the concept of putting a trigger lock or a cable lock in the box of every new gun sold came up and the industry was getting behind it, he actually said that back then there was massive pushback. He said that he almost lost his job because he thought it was a good idea if we put one of those locks in the boxes, and the community kind of pushed back and were saying, this is ridiculous. It's a slippery slope, right? And it's the same thing you guys are dealing with the technology. At the time, that was something that was technology, right? That was a far out concept, but it goes to show you how long this has been happening, right? Like this isn't new, this type of pushback or reluctance to join in, to
looked at that.
Accept.
The hesitancy and the slippery slope path is a reasonable position to take. Right? Because it can happen, right? Throughout history, there's been evidence of that. So I think it's a good mentality to have, to be cautious, and do your homework, do your research, understand, work with the companies that are doing it the right way. Companies that are doing it the wrong way. I think you mentioned the safe company earlier. Kick them to the curb. So I like the mentality of being maybe a little slower to adopt a new position on those things, to adopt new technology, do your research and your homework. And I'd encourage, listeners of this podcast, do research on Gun Alert and on American Rounds, and you'll see that, we're actively 2A supporters, and our technology and our products and services back.
Yeah. Patrick, when I first met you, one of the things that I loved, and there's nothing wrong with flat out asking somebody, right? Like when we first talked, I think I brought this up right away. I was like, what are you doing about people's privacy and the pushback you're going to get? And you hit it head on. You're like, no, I get it. Like, this is something that we have to address. And it's something, and unfortunately, I think we're just going to have to keep having these podcasts and keep reminding people and asking people to do their due diligence. reach out to the companies and say, where's your stance? Because here's the thing. It's just like Walk Talk America. When I first started and I wanted people to take the free and anonymous mental health screenings, this is not the same as 6 years later, right? In the beginning, there maybe half of the people that came up to the booth said, I'd never do that because I don't know what you're going to do with that information. If I messed up one time, right? And I remember the very first time I took the screening, and I always tell this story, Kevin knows, right? I took the screening, I took a bunch of screenings, and I answered them honestly, like the position I'm in mentally right now. And then I made a false one where I answered it like somebody who's in the worst crisis ever, because I needed to know that there was no phone call coming to my house. So there was nobody who was going to be like, are you okay? Because it said free and anonymous, but I had to prove that theory. I also wanted to see if they asked anything about firearms, which they didn't, right? Because it's powered by Mental Health America with our partnership in this. And everything worked out. A couple of years into it, there's less skepticism. But you still have these people that are like, well, where does this go? Where's this information? Da, 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 da. Once again, the three organizations on this podcast right now, if we screw up one time, it's a wrap. It's a wrap.
Yeah.
There's no coming back. We're not there yet to where maybe we could be like Liberty Safe and backtrack and learn from our mistakes, because they've been around for a while. And hopefully we'll get to that point where we're that big, but we're never going to make a mistake. But we have one shot at this. And once we blow the trust in the community, nobody is going to support any of these organizations. So just the fact that we're on here addressing this just shows that we are coming from a good place. And we know how it's thin ice always for this when it comes to this topic.
I think what Grant said about moving cautiously and slowly, I agree. I think we have to earn everyone's trust. You said it best, Michael. We don't have any second chances. We got to be right 100%. We got to be good and right and righteous and true to our word all the time, or else. And that's okay. That's an okay standard to live by me. I'm okay with that, being held to a highest, best possible standard. But it will take time. The skepticism, I think, will always be there. But it'll dwindle down. It'll get reduced slowly but surely. You'll eventually only have 5 or 10% holdout on either side. I mean, our goal really should be, if we collectively believe 55 to 60% of the population doesn't think twice about us, it's the 20% ish on each side. All we got to do is expand that middle number. Let's get that number from 60 to 80. And then leave it 10 and 10 on each side, and they can both go and scream and yell at each other. And that's it. But we'll have I think we'll have done the community at large a very big service if we can have 70 to 80% of the people on board with sensible solutions, whether it's whatever the tests you're providing, Michael, whether it's the machines that Grant provides, whether it's the motion sensor locks that we provide. And there'll be others out there that are going to come out with tech and come out with solutions. Look, the goal here is to reduce firearm tragedies, whether self-inflicted or not. I mean, that's the goal. Let's lower that number. I mean, Michael, every time you and I are together, that is one of the main things we talk about. How do we get whatever the number is? 137, 22, 66. There's numbers floating around every day. Whatever the numbers are, let's just try to reduce them. And let's get the politicians to work with us as opposed to trying to work against us. And I'm saying that both to the right and to the left. I've spoken to very right-leaning conservative politicians that basically say, hey, leave me alone. And I've spoken to very left-committed politicians that say, this is all great, but wouldn't it just be easier to take everyone's guns away? I've been on a call like this and had a very prominent, very visible congresswoman say that to me with a smile on her face. Yeah, Patrick, this lock this is great, motion and all that, and with an app. Wow, that is so cool. I like that a lot. And she's telling her administrative assistant, make notes of this. This is very interesting. So I finally said, so Mrs. Congresswoman, Madam Congresswoman, would you entertain introducing legislation for this? No, our goal is really to take everyone's guns away.
Yeah.
That was it. That was her answer.
Yeah. And that's never going to happen. That's what we like to call a cartoon world.
Yeah, sure.
So we're up against it, but I want to give both of you a few minutes. And Patrick, we'll start with you. Walk us through. I'm the consumer. I buy your product. How do you protect my personal information from me being the purchaser of your product standpoint?
So the relationship is you download an app. So now you have an app on your phone and you self onboard your device. So you basically go onto your app, you tell it the serial number. Every product has a QR code or a UPC code or a serial number handwritten. So you either take a picture of the QR code or you type in the serial number and you give the ID number of your device. And now that's embedded into your app. So now our servers know that anytime this information is sent about this device is sent to your app, there is no online portal. You can't log in from a computer or a laptop. It's just the app. So you must have a smartphone. You must self-register the connection between your phone and your device. And then on the back ends, anytime that our servers send information about your firearm, again, whether it's been moved or whether it's on the move, sending its location, the minute that you acknowledge that the phone acknowledges receipt of that information, then the server deletes that data.
Yeah. And once again, Gun Alert is a great product that can be used 24/7. Or maybe you just, we like to say it's like an insurance policy, right? Maybe you have one in your house for when crisis pops up and it becomes a suicide prevention tool, right? My kid is going through something because it's the first time she's ever had her heart broken. Just to be safe, we're going to take this extra precaution and use a Gun Alert. So for the listeners, understand that, I think it's a great product that you could use 24/7, but also it can be used in situations, right? And I think the end user has to decide. But, this type of technology, this type of safety that we can bring into the community, I think is great, especially when the outside world sees us making these efforts to police our own and find our own solutions. I just think it speaks volumes and it'll help in our fight because the expectation level of us is that we absolutely do not care and we only want to arm everybody. We don't want to save anybody. We just want to fall back on pride for my cold dead hands, Second Amendment, right? And that's just not true. And we could be the leaders in this space. And I think your product will be in the forefront of that because Gun Alert,
It's a good one.
I think, is just an awesome company. And I love you and I love that you're behind it. And I love that you're so quick to learn about this community and figure out what the needs are and then provide the solution. So that's awesome, Patrick. Grant, I walk up to this, I need 9mm ammo and I'm in the grocery store. I walk up to this machine. This is such a cool concept. Now I'm ordering. How do you protect my privacy?
Yeah, so it's easy. You just go up, touch screen, put it in the shopping cart, you click out just like you would on your tablet or your PC, and dispenses your ammo. When you're going through the process, it's going to ask you to scan your ID. It's going to scan it. It's going to do a picture of you, just match it to your ID so we know it's you and someone didn't steal your ID. And that's it. There's no once that handshake's made and says, "Yep, this is the right person. The ID is legit." There's no data storage saved. It's just a communication that said yes or no. And there's no data saved. There's no information from your ID that's stored, anything like that. And it'll dispense your product and you go on about your day.
Grant, how does
Go to the range, go hunting, go have some fun.
How does the IDing process work for, I'm just going down the rabbit hole of a skeptical person's mind of if I get a new ID, how does that machine keep updated with a different database?
So there's companies out there that do that similar to what the TSA uses. The ID scanners we use are the same ones that you'll see at TSA if you're going through the airport. It just scans your ID in and out. All it's doing is validating that's lit. So it's looking at the watermarks. It's looking at all the various different IDs across the states. There's, databases that says, yeah, this is a legitimate ID. It's not expired. It's not a fake ID, etc. And then the picture to match the face on the ID to say, we get the biggest complaint is the guys have the really long beards now. They don't have it on their ID. Sometimes the facial capture won't pick it up. So, that's kind of a complaint we get sometimes, but I mean, that's it. That's the end of the handshake. We don't do any background checks, so it's not doing a background check, right? So there are states like California, New York, different places where you have to do background checks for ammunition purchases or various, locations, and DC as well. We don't, we're not in those states. We're not setting up the machines to do those background checks. So no different than if you're going to go buy it at a sporting goods store.
Yeah, I used to have a company that was based in New Jersey, and I remember one time I had to go pick up some ammo. My national sales manager and I had to go pick up some ammo because we were testing out some firearms that had just arrived in the United States. And I think I went to like a Cabela's or Bass Pro, whatever, Sportsman's Warehouse, whatever they had at the time in Jersey. And I went to buy ammo, and they're like, we can't sell you this ammo because it's an out-of-state license.
Yeah. Those states are having a lot of problems with it. There's lines. It's a pain. And, they continuously try to legislate background checks for ammunition, but it would overwhelm the system. You're talking about, 300 million background checks plus a year going on at a time. So it would overwhelm the system to do it on ammunition. We're the I've been buying ammo forever. I've never had my ID checked one time, ever. Not when I was 17, 18, 19, never had it ever checked. Still to this day. So, we're the only company that can say, we just validate an ID at every transaction. That's it. That's all we're doing. We're just validating the ID.
Right. And that makes perfect sense when you apply it to the fact that, there are kids out there that have shot up schools, right? And that's been held against us. Every negative outcome, whether it's a suicide statistic or a mass shooting statistic, tied to gun violence, gets used against us. So the more we mitigate those numbers, the better off we are in the future. And the more we have arguments against Grant technology. What do you have, a clapper?
That's twice now. My office light is off over there. My office light's on a motion detector. It's been too long. So see, technology knows I'm lazy, and I'll forget off my light.
Right. I love it. All right. But yeah, every one of these things is going to be used against us. So we might as well, come together, figure out solutions that we can have pushback. I speak of a lot of events. I go to a lot of conferences where the crowd is anti-gun, and they don't even know that this technology exists, or they don't understand it, or they don't think we're even doing anything like this. So I love to be able to go into these things armed with that knowledge so that I can educate them on what the community is doing to prevent gun violence. It's such a horrible term. Microphone violence, hammer violence, remote control violence. I mean,
exactly. F2.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. But Patrick, how do people get a hold of you or look into your company a little bit more?
mygunalert.com or medalert.com. We've got a lot of information on our website. We've got phone numbers there. We are an American-based company. We make our products in the U.S. We have customer support in the U.S. So, just look us up online. That's the easiest. And then from there, you just send us an email or call us. We'll answer questions. But we provide both direct-to-consumer sales and direct-to-business. We work with nonprofits, we work with government agencies, law enforcement agencies. We have a program called SAFE, which stands for Secure All Firearms Effectively, where we work directly with firearm instructors. Our belief is if you can meet the firearm owner where they're at, I don't think they're going to walk into a Cabela's and ask for a product like ours. Not for the near future, at least. But when they just bought their first gun, first-time gun owner, they're going to get lessons, how to use the gun safety tips and all that. Firearm instructor just says to them, hey, by the way, we recommend something like this. So I would say to anybody in your audience that is a firearm instructor, look us up. We've had, one of the best, I'll end it with this. One of the best compliments we ever had was someone that listens to your show, Michael, heard us talking, contacted you, said they were very skeptical, didn't believe in it, ended up doing some due diligence, ultimately contacted me 3-4 weeks later and asked me to come on their podcast. And we had a very robust conversation. And at the end, he was a firearm instructor. He isn't a firearm instructor. At the end, he's like, I'm convinced this is very, very smart solution. So we have won the hearts and minds over of some people, not everybody, but one by one, I think once they hear that this is just a common sense approach to responsible gun ownership. Especially now with the new potentially reciprocity of carry conceal laws are going to be effective in every single state. People are going to have guns in their glove boxes and their trunks. That's where a lot of guns are stolen. So again, to have something on there that lets you know immediately if that gun is picked up or touched or taken, it's naturally going to help prevent or reduce the number of tragedies. That's our end game. That's our goal. And obviously, we're very proud to be one sold item in American Rounds. Our product can be purchased through Grant's machines, which we're very proud of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And for the listening audience, as someone who's had 2 guns stolen at SHOT Show, on the SHOT Show floor, came to my booth one year and noticed 2 of the guns that were locked through cables were gone, and looked at my national sales manager. We both said, that's not good. At the same time, never got those guns recovered, never got an alert that they were moved, right? Thinking that SHOT Show floor had security that would prevent these things and cameras, which they don't. When you feel violated like that, the one thing you want is the person who stole it to get caught, right? And you want to see where your gun's going. And, I could say that I wish I would have had 2 gun alerts on those guns, but...
I mean, think about it. It started with LoJack, but, now that was a third-party aftermarket, car safety solution introduced in the 80s, 90s. And now, cars are just every single car directly from the manufacturers come with an alarm, right? Most homes have an alarm, or many homes, I shouldn't say most, but, many homes have an alarm. We understand we live in a society where, unfortunately, people take things. And so it's great to know that if your car gets stolen, you now have the ability to call the police and say, my car's gone and it's driving down the street. Go get it. Right?
Right.
Your firearm, just same way that, lose your car, it's obviously financially it's going to hurt. But with a gun, I mean, if that gun is used nefariously, you now have the liability potentially of being criminally, held liable for that. And so someone steals your $1,000 gun and then goes and kills somebody. And now you spend 10 years in jail. That's no good.
Yeah, we definitely are starting to see liability be placed on parents and owners of these firearms. So I completely agree with you. Grant, how do people learn about this awesome concept? Where do they go to see you? What's your social media?
Yeah, so AmericanRounds.com. Just, go there. All our social media links are there. We're on all the major platforms except Zuckerberg. He keeps us off there, at least for now.
He may lighten up.
Yeah, man.
He may lighten up.
Yeah, we
don't know that.
We're expanding. So right now we've got machines in Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas, Colorado, and we're expanding. We just launched a franchise version of the company, so people can own their own American Rounds business. Get that information through our website. And so we're like I said, 2025 is going to be a great year. We're expanding. Right now we've got franchisees that are looking at us in Tennessee, Arizona, Florida, Carolinas, all over. So Idaho. If we can, we're going to be launching a lot of new product. Gun alerts going to be in our machines this year. So like I said, we have a lot of good things coming.
Okay. And both of you are going to be at SHOT Show, so I look forward to seeing both of you and hanging out with you there. And it'd be interesting. I think I'm going to have both of you come back on after SHOT Show separately and just kind of talk about what your thoughts are on SHOT Show coming from this angle of providing alternative solutions to issues that the firearms industry has and how well you were received at SHOT Show, because I'm sure you're going to be well received. But I look forward to seeing both of you next week. Kevin, you too. But thank you for coming on today. Thank you for tackling this topic. It's not an easy one. It's very hard. This is something to where, and all of us go through it. We have this great idea and we want to help people, and we put ourselves out there, and then we go into the comment section, and 90% of it could be positive, but that 10% is the thing that makes you want to throw your chair through a window. So it's just something I think we're going to always be battling, but those voices are loud. But this is why we do these shows, and this is why we're not afraid to to confront it and talk about it and expose ourselves to where people, if they have an issue, just ask. Don't assume. Email the company, get on our live chat, all those ways that you can actually participate in asking a question if you have an issue. But till next week, I want to thank everybody that has watched this show. As the listeners, I want to thank all of the sponsors for WTTA. This is not possible without them. Specifically, I want to thank Ruger and Arms Corps. Really appreciate the love over the years. And till the next time, we wish you better mental wellness.